Welcome back to the growing Ptolemaic Empire. This is Gamer1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Aggressors Ancient Rome from Slitherine Games. So we're going to continue this. If I could speak well, it would be good for this type of job. We're going to end the turn and watch what the rest of the AI players are doing. Okay, they're moving around there. They're setting that up. That's up by the Black Sea, which we're trading with, as you can see there, which is a good thing. Oh, they survived, wow. The dying Seleucids. Yes, I do believe, had the Ptolemies taken down the Seleucids, or at least the Seleucids in west of the Tigris and Euphrates, or whatever, sort of modern day Syria and west, securely, because the Seleucid Empire capital was, at least for a time, if I got all this right, sorry, I may not, but for a time it was Antioch, but it was also, I think, down more towards, Babylon, or modern day Baghdad, that sort of Tigris and Euphrates valleys. So, and they extended very far east. So I'm not saying that necessarily had to take all of that down, but had they taken away, shall we say, the Mediterranean world of the Seleucids and integrated that well into a Ptolemaic empire, a Hellenistic empire, one that's still connected very strongly with Egypt, but because I'm looking at this, and I love talking about this, as you well know, history and things. God, I'm not an expert on any of this ancient stuff. I've read some books. I know some things. I don't want to come off as, sounding too expert when I'm not. But because of various popular lore and culture, it goes back to, the foundation of the sort of Caesar dynasty, if you will, and their myths that they brought up and reinforced in the, shall we say, the Anglo world through Shakespeare's plays. That's where you get et tu, Brute. Bringing in the end of the Ptolemaic world is right as part of that. So we know that, and in some ways it was a very good series, Rome, that was on HBO, I believe it was, and then you've got the Elizabeth Taylor movie, Cleopatra, and whatever. In many ways, that's very historical. In many ways, it's Hollywood, especially the Cleopatra. It's Hollywood too, but you have this inbred dynasty that, by the time Rome is showing up, it's sort of basically Egypt and Cyprus. That's about it. It's lost its sort of, if you will, Cyrenaic, Eastern Libya territories, which were never terribly useful, I don't think, meaning that that's not a major powerhouse. It's lost whatever influences it's had in, shall we say, Israel region, and we can often look, because there's Israel and there's Judea, and those, I don't know if many of you know this, at least at some times, those are two different kingdoms, simultaneous Jewish kingdoms. Oh God, I don't want to say any more because I know I'm going to get some of it wrong, but but even there, that it's often sort of like inland Judea, coastal somebody else, and so the Jews were sort of ruling themselves at times. At times you have like the Babylonian captivity for them if we're going way back and whatever, and then later in this time period, then this time period, you have Rome taking over. But you often have, what is like, I don't know, modern day Jordan to their east. That's a different monarchy. A lot of these sort of like, shall we say, petty kingdoms. And to some degree or another, and it varies at times, God, I don't know the details of it. So, there, but sort of, it's sort of like, they're not, somebody's acknowledged as king and he's sort of officially in charge and sort of locally is, but maybe sort of like a governor, and so more independent maybe than a satrap, but not quite a, it's like Canada in a way. Canada can sort of kind of do its own thing, but it's not going to go to war allied with somebody against the United States. So let's say, I don't know, you have Justin Trudeau, you have the Trudeau family, because you have the father and son, very much love Cuba. They love Cuba. They think Cuba is the greatest thing in the world. Castro's Cuba is the greatest thing in the world. And, and could have all kinds of alliances with helping out Cuba. But the minute that there's any sort of military type action, and they might even secretly feed, if they get a hold of the right Trudeau types, get a hold of secrets, might even feed them to, if their intelligence service gets it, might feed it to Cuba if it's something relates to Cuba. So they might very much emotionally be on Cuba's side. But, if, say, we're doing another Bay of Pigs or doing an invasion, Canada is not going to be going to war with the U.S. It's not even going to do any sanctions. It's not even going to like close the border or do anything like that. So it may help Cuba all at once, but Canada is very much in the American sphere. It is not going. It's still, obviously, everybody knows Canada's still an independent country, and it could, say, close the border with the U.S. without being an act of war, to cut off trade and protest, whatever you might want to, think about over the American aggression against Cuba or something like that. It isn't going to do that because it's just not in Canada's long-term interest. Because if you do that enough, eventually America might just accidentally move its border north. And we can talk about total resistance and the sort of Swiss mode and guerrillas and whatnot, but Canada basically has no army. It has a few sort of expeditionary type units, and it even, after some bad stuff, I think it was in Somalia or something, they disbanded their parachute regiment over that. So, they don't even really have an army. And at times, I think they were leasing the Haubitze 2000, the really nice German self-propelled 155 millimeter artillery pieces. Better than anything the U.S. has, in my opinion, at least in standard service. We may be developing, there's a few projects in development that might surpass it, but leasing some of that for their Afghanistan campaign from other countries, because they didn't have anything suitable and they didn't have the money to buy it in their budget, so they leased it, leasing weapons. So Canada doesn't have any sort of army, and it doesn't have you go into the wilderness in Canada, everybody has a bolt action rifle or something, because it's dangerous up there, but guns aren't nearly as common a thing in Canada as they are in the U.S. And sure, those people could decide to do some sort of, total resistance campaign against American aggression. But, if it's, say, more or less the current U.S. government and culture versus the more or less Canadian government and culture, the Canadians would write some really nice letters of protest against being incorporated into the United States. But it just sort of would. If you sort of, are constantly being an annoyance to the U.S., like closing the borders or throwing out American citizens or, confiscating property of American citizens and American companies in Canada in protest over things. If it's doing that kind of aggressive, I'm not talking about shooting guns into America or invading it or anything like that, but if it's constantly doing something in a way that's upsetting to America, America could just decide at some point, and it wouldn't. And if you're thinking, God, America would never do this or whatever, I'm not talking about now. I'm talking about 20, 30, 40 years from now. If it's had a history of doing this, America might just go and do that. Where if you go, well, why haven't they done it with Mexico? Well, we have, but also, at least currently, though, I don't know if Mexico realizes this. Do you realize that if there's enough Mexicans in America, that if America becomes really because viewers here, I live in California. I'm a third generation Californian. For my age, that is, a small percentage of our population, because so many Californians that are born in America have come, from other parts of America to California over the years. So, or, I'm not just talking about people foreign to America. I'm talking about Americans just moving into California too. So I'm a Californian, so I am part of an Anglo-Hispanic culture. Street names, city names, food, hearing the language. I am not in any way thinking we gotta reduce Mexican influence in California. No, because we're a state that's heavily Hispanic, but America still is not heavily Hispanic. The rest, Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, particularly New Mexico, is, but not Massachusetts or Maine or Wisconsin, and even the more recent immigrants from Latin countries to those regions are still a tiny fraction of the population in reality. But if you have enough Hispanic influence in Mexico, why not just take it all? Because the real reason why the U.S. hasn't taken any more of Mexican territory than it did is because of cultural reasons. It doesn't want large populations of culturally different people. When California gets its independence or declares its independence from Mexico, there are very few Mexicans living. I mean, in the few thousands, not tens of thousands, in a few thousands living in the province or whatever of California at the time. There's a lot more Indians, and there had been a lot of incoming Anglo-Americans coming into California at that time. Tejas definitely had a significant Mexican population in, but for its size, it was still very much of an empty province that also had a lot of Anglos coming in. And Arizona, New Mexico, and Nevada, those were just mostly Indian territory, quite honestly, as a percentage of the populations there. There were more Indians than there were Mexicans. And if you look at Arizona, they didn't, in a primitive agricultural sense, didn't support large groups of populations. So the Indians weren't, dense on the ground. I mean, there were significant numbers of them, and I'm not even going to mention numbers because I don't know. But I just know that, if you, whether it's watching the movies or looking at the documentaries, there were lots of tribes and groups of people. But compared to the population density, even rurally, in like the state at the time of Massachusetts, there's so many more people living. I'm not talking about living in Boston or some of the major cities at the time. I'm just talking rurally. There's so much denser population than there is out in the desert Southwest, because in the desert Southwest there are wonderful oases of living conditions that have plenty of water, have plenty of good soil for growing food in, and plenty of animals. But notice what I said, oasis of them, river valleys. It's not quite the extreme of Egypt, where you have the Nile River valley, and then like ultimate desert, desert with almost big sand dunes. Most of America Southwest is not sand dune territory. I think the only sand dunes you really get are in California, and that's in a very limited place where they go out and film that stuff that you may see either modern, dune buggies riding, or where they, go film the original version. There's actually a sort of a huge sort of buried city out there that was for the original Cleopatra, the original Ben-Hur, the silent version of Ben-Hur, and they just sort of got buried it. Now it's sort of, I don't know if they undug it, how much it would be worth, because it was just all wood frames with plaster on it. It wasn't stone. It wasn't, looks, to an early black and white film camera, looks like big, imposing, because it was also by Cecil B. DeMille, as well as his later Charlton Heston starring Ben-Hur movie. But the original one was as lavish as big sets, but that got buried out there in the desert, and it's just cheaply done for the movies. So it's not like you could uncover and have all the ruins as a tourist event, kind of thing, to where the movie was. It'd probably just all collapse and fall apart if it hasn't already. But so those are sort of rare spots, but most of it is sagebrush and whatever. In some areas there's lots of sagebrush. It's hard to walk through, it's hard to ride through, but that area does not support growing of agriculture. Does some ranching, and then you can look at other places. So that's why I say a lot of that area is empty, especially back then. Empty of Indians in compared to other places, but there were a lot for there. So, don't jump on me for that. But that is why they took those regions in the sense that, California, what was it, 3 to 6 days it was as an independent country. We still fly the California independent flag. We declared independence. With the entire goal of becoming a U.S. state. But unlike, say, Nevada or Oregon or Utah, California goes from being a province of Mexico to being an independent state, or an independent nation, to being an actual state in the union, or within months, hours, whatever. It doesn't spend time as a territory, because it sort of comes in with the understanding that it is going to have statehood and have senators and have all this stuff. And it was overwhelmingly supported. I mean, like 70-80% supported doing this by the Mexican population in California at the time, because they saw Mexico City as being a far off, corrupt government, that they did not have any real senators or anything like that, that it was just some sort of it was a colonial province of a colonial country that was way out there. It's sort of like going, in a way, it's very much like going from being a territory, because if you look at the territories before they become states, from being a territory in which the governor is sent out by Washington or sent out by Mexico City, as opposed to being a local elected official. They would, and I don't know all the details of it, but just the local governments under Mexico. But it goes from that to being a state in which it has Congress people, senators, and gets to elect its own government. So most of the big old hacienda families and other elements really support joining Mexico. And then if you look at like the state of New Mexico, if I have this right, was never a part of the trying to think about this in detail. Trying to think. Was it? No, it was. It was part of Mexico for a while. Trying to remember if New Mexico. But it was only briefly part of Mexico, because it goes from being a Spanish province, owned by Spain. Trying to remember some of this stuff. To being part of the United, it goes from Spain to briefly Mexico to being part of Spain. And so some of the very old families in New Mexico are very much old Spanish families. And so they don't owe allegiance to Mexico, really. They're that was just sort of a brief thing, and it was, okay, so the reason we don't decide to absentmindedly deal with our annoying southern neighbor is because it's culturally different, and there are lots of people down there. So to have all of those people to become part of America would radically change the culture. I know the modern political left wants to always frame it in race, and because they're racist and they want to call other people racist, but it's really cultural. It's cultural. And so that's why the U.S., when it's invaded Mexico, when it, under Pershing, it invades Mexico, under, Zachary Taylor, in which a lot of the officers who become American generals in the Civil War go down in the Mexican-American War, get down to Mexico City, invade and shoot up Mexico and deal with our war with Mexico, then leave. Because we don't want to own this culturally different place. And so that's sort of the difference. Okay. Back to here. So that's sort of kind of like some of the Jewish states going in the sort of Hellenistic world, is that they're there, and some of these other minor kingdoms are, between the Ptolemaic empires, the Seleucid empire, the Roman empires, they are petty kingdoms, and there's a bunch of them, and again, I'm not going to go into, and some of them are the sort of factions or names or whatever in this game that end up being, a minor petty kingdom under the Roman Empire, are sort of set up that way, and they're either in the one of these sort of three, or going back further before, because Rome sort of if you look at the Seleucids, Persians. Yeah, if you look at the Seleucids and the way they dress, sometimes they look more Persian than anything else, but they're still a Hellenistic empire. Okay, and get back to, this is, I know, going long. Sorry about that. And one of the reasons why I sort of freeze it so you can jump ahead if you don't like listening to this. So, Ptolemy himself gets set up as Pharaoh of Egypt. They are reasonably well accepted by the Egyptians themselves, because Alexander sort of frees Egypt from the Persian Empire. They don't like the Persians. Not that they're going to love the Greeks, but they're more mad at the Persians. Of course, Alexander, cuts the Gordian knot, and that's over in here, but goes out and visits Siwa, sort of spends some time in Egypt, and has a sort of a good public relations campaign, and goes away and doesn't do much. And so the Egyptians aren't that unhappy with them at all. And then, of course, Ptolemy comes down and secures the kingdom. And rules, I think, again, I don't know in detail, but it was a fairly light touch when it comes to Egyptian culture. Not talking about beheading enemies or how much they tax the local people that are upset. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about to the Egyptian culture. Sort of kind of respects it. Now, of course, sets up his Hellenistic enclave of Alexandria, which is, very much this. Someone looking like a Roman type or Greek type, as opposed to somebody looking like an Egyptian. And sets up his city there. And so he doesn't have to fight the local population for, like in a guerrilla campaign or putting down too many. There are rebellions and there are uprisings for over generations. But Ptolemy the First, doesn't really have to, because he comes in with his Macedonian phalanx troops. Those are just sort of like the M1 Abrams of their time in history. You get enough of them, you put them in there, they're unbeatable, basically, from anything the Egyptians have. Now, over the generations, the Ptolemies know this and know that this is the source of their power in Egypt. You very well may set up an army that is 3/4 Egyptian, but all of those rest of those troops are just sort of fluff troops. It's the phalanx troops primarily are what wins battles and wars. So they have a constant struggle to keep up a Greco-Macedonian connection for these troops, and that is hiring just mercenaries, recruitment drives, which I would say are a bit different in that you're recruiting people from literally Macedonia but other Greek regions to come and live and settle in Egypt, and to the point that they're setting up colonies down the River Nile, or up the River Nile, I guess you would say, that are Macedonian, Greco-Macedonian small colonies for these troops. And I'm sure there's different relationships, but to settle on them, to either be, after being full-time soldier, you now get to go be, you get to go get some, land, and that if you stay on it long enough, you'll get to own it, and your children and grandchildren can inherit it. So they're trying to create this, Greek population there. And so that these people would be militia, like, oh, there's an uprising. Okay, everybody go put on their old armor and whatnot and get ready to go fight. That, too, as well as being sort of settled on in the idea of a also feudalistic sense, in that, oh, well, instead of paying you, silver or gold or whatever every month or week, we'll just say that that's your farm. You have some people that are working there that are Egyptians that, and you get to have the profit from that farm. And you get to have that farm so long as you're a good soldier, loyal to the Macedonian or the Ptolemaic monarchy. So that these people are like, well, if somebody other than the Ptolemy gets to rule Egypt, the Egyptian, and we're too few of people, we're not going to be staying around here. So we've got to support, because at times there's Ptolemies fighting Ptolemy. So you might fight another Ptolemy, but once we settle down whose king is, we're all agreed that the Ptolemies stay in power. And so that this way you're not having, the idea of gold or some other sort of payment system that the Ptolemies have to do out their treasury to keep this guy being a loyal soldier. No, he has profits from a land that he sort of oversees, in sort of colony groups. And so this way it doesn't come out of their treasury, but pays for keeping these people on. So these people are not just like, hey, we won, we've lost, doesn't matter, we'll go on to be mercenaries in somebody else's army. They're setting up families, homes, and importing women from Greek regions as well. I'm sure there's intermixing with Egyptians too, but there is definitely record and whatnot of being women brought down for these people. So the Ptolemies are constantly fighting for this group of persons. By the time you get to the famous last Cleopatra, that's almost done. Because of Roman encroachment into Greece, moving more from a phalanx fighting system, though it's still a big thing at the time of Julius Caesar, but moving from that more into the Roman legionary fighting system, in which the Ptolemies and other, but I think a bit more so in the Seleucids, are what are they, imitation legion type stuff, and that you get a few Romans, whether they are former officers or centurions or just foot soldiers, come to these different kingdoms, and yeah, I'll train up some of your locals to fight like us, and you know, I'll help you figure out what the equipment should be like. So and mostly they don't fight as well as real Roman units, but they fight in the Roman style. So if you're pitting those units against Romans generally win. Pitting those, you know, wannabe legionary units against some of the other, especially lighter troops, they do reasonably well in the region. At least that's my limited analysis. So as time goes on, like I say, Ptolemaic Egypt is cut off from its supply of what's keeping it in power. So when Rome's coming in, Rome overwhelms them. But had they taken down the Seleucids in the Mediterranean world and get both physical, because the mainland Anatolia colonies of the Ptolemies are long gone. By the time of Cleopatra, only Cyprus really remains, which is very much a Greek. You look at the Ptolemaic ruins, there's some funeral caves that look like buildings once you get inside of them, meaning they have Greek columns and all this stuff, and it's, you know, carved out of stone, but it looks like it's a, you know, once you're down in it, it looks like you're in a building above ground kind of thing. It's about the only thing that's really left. It's all Greek, with maybe, if I'm remembering, little Egyptian accents, but it's mostly all Greek. So they've been dated to very much towards middle or late Ptolemaic structures. So the Ptolemies outside of Egypt very much present a Greek face to the world. They, you know, all the pictures and portraits and statues are the Ptolemies in Greek clothing with Greek hairstyles, as opposed to Egyptian clothing and Egyptian hairstyles. So that sort of tells you something about the Ptolemies. They see themselves as Greeks, but present themselves as Egyptians to Egypt. And because you also look at the coinage used in Egypt, generally it's done in the Greek style. Okay, so I know that's a long statement, but I really think had you gotten rid of the Seleucids in the Mediterranean, the Hellenistic world wouldn't have fallen to the Roman world. I guess that's sort of my analysis. Okay, we got food, we got coal, we've got reasonable amount of stones. We've got a reasonable amount of people to give up one. We can use some influence. We like gold. We definitely use iron. We could definitely use wood. And sure, we can use science. So that's good. I like that. And Ptolemaic Empire. Ooh, more wood, science, people. Okay, food, people. Okay. I was warned not to let people get too low. So I may be overdoing the people thing. Cancel. I don't want to be deep brothers in arms with Pergamemnon. But I don't mind the other thing, so we won't increase that. Okay, starving army close to Tarsus has been damaged. Okay. Cyrus army close to Tarsus. Okay, well, good. Let's make sure we don't move him. I like that I pulled that off. Let's go up and see about dealing with that. I know a lot of talk, but Ptolemaic Empire. Not that army. Yes. Not that army. It's the one on board ship, which okay. Yes, we know you're starving. Okay, now we see future enemies here, the Ordisians, the guys that took our city over here, that made them our enemies, is pushing into Seleucid territory. So we're going to, instead of just moving to, like, say, get another, which would be a good idea, mine here, we're going to try to gobble up territory as best we can. See if we can take this temple thing. I think that's what it is. Good, victory. So that we can get food over to here and deal with good stuff that way.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, good. Our ship's ready. So we're going to have our ship come down here. And these guys are going to get on board the ship. And the ship's going to come back to here. These guys are going to go there and hopefully get repaired. Yes. We wanted to enter the shipyard. So, that's going reasonably well. Now, these guys here, we want to come up to here and then build a route to help supply once you can.
Yes.
Yes, I know we are going to have supply problems.
Yes. Yes.
Trying to click the helmet here. Those guys. Yes, I want to move on a bit on a broad front. Hopefully we'll get the supply dealt with there. Now, okay, these guys are still building their road. Okay, we have quite a lot of stuff here. Wood. Yeah, I don't think that's in danger of being damaged or retaken anytime soon. We are building another colonist type person come out of Jerusalem to help build roads and other connectivities around here, including hopefully get some soldiers to get up some more of this land. But I'm heading off the invasion, so I think we're done. I was thinking about improving cities and things, but I don't know what the AI is doing when it's just running around a contained province. Because there's nothing changing. There's no like new units on their border that they're getting ready to confront or something. Oh, there they. Ooh, that looks like it'll be a good fight. Not that I wouldn't mind getting a hold of Lower Greece, the Peloponnese, which is sort of Athens and Sparta type stuff. But I definitely want to try to move up into northern Greece. Okay. Okay, guys. New technology, cities, village, paved roads. Okay. Good. Now, we could do amphitheaters. wagons. That's all that we could do now. Yeah, that would help transporting over long, but I see C as being a bit better. We're gonna skip this time, just because I want to keep, especially more research building up. Hopefully, maybe to get. This is not enough research here for a republic. Don't know if we want to, or literacy, or field defense, maybe. Don't even know what some of those are. Okay, want you to cancel peace. No. Athens. No, we're not going to defense pact your brother in arms because we don't want to fight Sparta right now. The caravans were attacked, yes. Caravans were attacked from there. Starving army in Tarsus was damaged. Okay. Okay, can I repair this? In here. Unload. Move unit, yeah, unload this unit type. I don't know. Okay, let's come down here. That would look like an interesting battle. Okay. So let's attack our friends the Carthaginians here. Fair chance, reliable assessment. Okay. Our hoplites, it turned out to be a draw. Okay, now these guys. Eliminate them. Victory. Great. Say fair chances. So let's go while we can. If we can get the city, that'd be great. Nope, defeat sent back. Okay. Building up a road that way. Okay, yeah. Get up as far as you can. Now, oh, also, how are we doing down? Okay, you're down here. What I want to see about is... building a temple down here. We have the gold, we have the stone, and we have the people. Let's see if we can put it right there. Okay, you guys. I think paved roads would be cool now. Build paved roads. Okay. Yeah, well, might as well start there. Okay, well, let's use our unit that I think is in the better shape to take out the colonist. Victory, okay. Okay, they can't get to there, but they can, which I'm hoping will get these guys from starving. feet. Uh-oh. I was hoping we'd get that. This is, I think, a stable, right? Plains, yeah. Peltus Cavalry, which would be nice. Okay. Now, I think trading would be helpful here. And we can afford that. Current loyalty is at 39%, so that is not good. Okay, so that's interesting. Didn't know that the units would have low loyalty that are built or repaired there. I did. Okay, well, so no, I don't want unit types from that. Let's see. Well, don't know what I can do about that. If there's a way to improve that. Other than just general happiness. Okay, let's come out here. Okay, we have civil service. That's which does help. City is protected from revolts and uprisings, so that does at least help that. Got that because these guys I. Have been somewhat wondering about keeping them loyal and keeping them from revolting. Oh, the temple is damaged. We could repair the temple, I think. I think that is under here. Yeah. There we go. See, I always wonder about, and I know I've talked about this before, but the what-ifs of history, and particularly if whether the Alexander Empire under Alexander, you know, he has his son that is unborn at the time of his death. So that's obviously too young to survive and rule in that world. Now, he might have died anyways, but had he lived longer, Alexander probably would have had more sons. So either you have a strong Alexandrian dynasty, or if, whether it's the Seleucids or the Ptolemies, had survived, how would history's gone differently? Now, Hellenism is in many ways strongly transferred into Romanism, and so we see the Roman Empire. And I say that because not only are a lot of the Greek thinkers and builders and inventors and whatnot influencing Rome, they are also also it's the main language of the Eastern Roman Empire is Greek. So that is very much what so that has lots of influence. So you very well might have had a different final outcome, if you will, from south of the Mediterranean, and you very well might not have had a Seljuk and Ottoman Turk conquest into Asia Minor, and so that might have turned out Turkey, modern day Turkey, might have ended up being much more Greek in culture. But I don't necessarily think, because I think even if it has stood, because we see a lot of transfer of Greek thought into Rome before Rome's conquest of the East. So I don't know that the modern European world would have been different, but I see the sort of Middle East being radically different than it is today. Okay, well, we don't mind gold at all. Stone, we could use a little bit of. We're mainly an exporter of that, so that's not a problem. These other things are good. So, I have very little, but we have modest amounts. I don't know that I'm overly in favor of this. So we'll do just a little bit, just if they wanna trade. Federation with Rome Republic. Roman Republic and Messalina signed a federation. Should be carefully assessed as close which these two states form. Okay. Okay, good. I did quickly see that we had those 1 units there today. Oh no, they're here now. Okay. Oh, he moved up. Okay.
Are you ready?
Defeat. Okay. I think I mainly want to get this opened here. Let's see. Probably should have concentrated on this one, especially if I don't get either one. Oh, good. Victory. Good. This way, hopefully, food and whatnot will be. Victory. Good. Now, here. Dangerous position, reliable. Okay, so we're gonna use you as a occupying territory type thing. Okay. I like finally having a good ship again. I can sail around and observe and think that I might actually win battles with. Oh, that is nice. Okay.
Huh?
Come up to here, and we're gonna have you build a route. Yeah, build route. It'll be a stone road, or paved road. Okay.
What?
Yeah, that looks good. I think that'll help. Having the paved roads will help all in there as well. Okay, well.
Yes.
Okay, well maybe next turn. Fair chance. Okay, we'll assault with you guys. Okay, defeat. Let's see if we can take you with this one. Nope. That didn't work out well. That was a massacre. Okay, so we're building internally here. We're securing up this area fairly well. Yeah. Loyalty is at 40%. Yeah, they have a civil service, so that will help keep from being... Let's get another hoplite. Don't know, well, yeah, I think we have the money. Let's get another ship. I like the fast-moving ships that we have here. Okay, okay, let's see. That's right now health there, about half. Let's see if it improves next turn. But we'll do that next time. I want to thank you all for watching. Thanks for liking the videos. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Love to see you around more often. And, of course, please post questions, comments, suggestions. Love hearing from you. See you next time for more historical gaming.